Hello everyone, my name is Shelby and this is the series where I reveal what is inside these mystery pottery molds I found on Gumtree. Hello and welcome to mold 69. These two I have wanted to do for ages. I saw them underneath my kiln and they were stacked together and have a similar shape. So I poured them up, tipped them out, and I was certain these are going to be succulent pots. They are deceiving. I was actually a little bit low-key disappointed because I really wanted these succulent pots. I wanted a big one with a little one. And I wanted to put them on a bench and make them all pretty and put all these patterns on them. And the mold tricked me, and this just goes to show that they are all a little bit mysterious, regardless if they're 1 piece, 2 piece, or 3 piece. I tip it over to let the piece fall out, and it turns out it's 2 bells. There's a big one and a little one. It's got that really nice curved shape with the lip. The lip goes right up to the top, so I had to perfect that pouring so that that lip was nice and smooth. But here is the mold itself. It looks handmade, as if someone has wrapped a piece of cardboard or the metal sheeting around and joined it to make the single piece, and then it looks like they've almost just plonked a bell in the middle there and poured the plaster over. Even when I was cleaning these out, I was like, yeah, these are succulent pots. I've got this. I'm so excited. But yeah, even just cleaning them out and feeling them, I just didn't even pick that they were going to be bells. Anyway, the show must go on. Despite my slight disappointment, I'm going to make this magical regardless. And I think that this has ended up being a really great week regardless, because back before mystery molds, I did actually do a series of bells where I strung them up with a row or a garland of everlasting daisies. So I'm gonna sort of revisit my own style of artwork pre-molds and use this piece to sort of bring that idea to life, kind of like a mix between my original work versus these mold pieces. So doing that, I wanted to make sure that the bells had enough detail that they had my own sort of signature on them, but not too much detail that it is really distracting and too much going on. Because once you string those everlasting daisies up, you start to get lots of color, texture, variation in shape and sizes, and you don't want it to be super distracting on the bell. You kind of want it to just complement and play really nicely with the garland. I am also just listening back to myself, and I do sound really nasally. I am recording this post playing with the everlasting daisies, and it has made my sinuses flare up, and I tried to get rid of it. I'm sipping tea amongst this voiceover, but I just cannot shake my sort of sinusy nasaliness, so I must apologize if that's an irritating voice thing for you, but yeah, sorry. There's nothing I can do about it. We're just gonna roll with it. It's part of the process. Got the nasal sinuses happening because I played with flowers. Hopefully I'll be good next week. The show must go on no matter how much it's irritating me hearing my own voice today, but I start by doing some really bold shapes on the bells. I'm doing some flowers, polka dots, some sort of gingham, trying to improve on the gingham I did in the week where I wasn't feeling so crash hot, but just making sure that there's enough negative space along with the positive space, so the blank areas versus where I've added some color and pattern design work. And that's just so that once those daisies are all stringed up, it should complement each other very nicely without it just one thing pulling from another. You don't want a design, well, in this work, I don't want my design to pull from each other. I kind of want them to work in harmony, and that's why it's a pretty simple week for the design. I want to talk about the fact that this week is number 69. I have had so many comments leading up to this week about people hyping up for number 69, and this is a G-rated channel. I want to keep this channel very G-rated, but I just want to say that those types of molds that you were hoping for this week, they are so rare. They are really rare. They're actually really sought after and hard to find. I think I read back in 2020 or even 2021, people were trying to find those molds, and it turned out that there was this artist that really specialized in, I guess, exploring gay relationships, that they created these phallic molds, and they're so rare. They're just really hard to find. But I have read online that you can make your own phallic molds by casting with like a silicone. Do your research, but if you want that type of mold, you can make it yourself. But this is just like a G-rated channel, so I don't want to go into that. But I thought doing 2 bells might be a nice way to sort of tie into that. I was going to reveal these last week, but I thought, 2 bells, that's probably the closest we're going to get to a G-rated 69 episode. I mean, we could have done those bears with the questionable face. That would have been cool too. So I'm sorry to disappoint, and I'm sorry I don't recall the name of the artist. I tried to find them, but we're just going to go with these 2 bells. So we're going to use my glazed tongs this week. I barely ever use these because the molds I get are such weird shapes, and the pieces I make are such weird shapes. They don't really work, but the bells they work for. So I just do a little test tong click like I'm cooking a barbecue, and I dip them in. Here's a slow-mo of going into the glaze. I just sort of wanted to show this because I captured how it changes from that glossy surface to that matte surface. I couldn't really capture that in a normal speed, but you can see it as it dries. It's so instant, but it's really cool to see in person and really hard to capture on camera. So dipping those in, the glazed tongs are cool. I don't really like them that much, but for shapes like this, they are amazing and so splendid to use. It's just most of my things aren't that shape, so they're not the best for my work, but I do recommend them for these shapes. Whilst the kiln was cooling, I am going to put in the footage from Floralee's Flower Farm. So Floralee specializes in growing dahlias, these beautiful buds of joy. You can see a bunch I got in my studio tour on my YouTube. I absolutely love these, but the reason I went out here this time was because Floralee currently has some gorgeous everlasting daisies in bloom, and I thought it was a perfect opportunity to buy some so that I can use locally grown flowers in these flower garland bells. I think it's just going to look so magical. So here are all the stems I bought. I think there was about 100 of them, and here is Floralee, the owner of the farm. Absolutely beautiful, and look at that smile. I was so grateful she let me come out and not just collect the flowers but film a little bit of her farm to show you all just how beautiful it is. But the reason I went out so early is because I had to allow these everlastings to dry out. So the way I dry mine out is I let them fully open in water and then let the water sort of run out. As it sort of gets hot, it sort of evaporates. The flowers also suck them up. And then I peel all the leaves off so that it's just sort of like a stalk, because the leaves can get really moldy and messy when you're drying them. And then I put them in bunches and hang them upside down. I pop my bunches in these sort of groups because that's what I can hang up on my shelves, but you can pop them in however big you like. I don't think that there's a limit to how big you are, but just allow them enough room so that they can sort of get some airflow through them so they don't collect dampness and grow mold, I guess. So once they've been drying out for a couple of weeks, I can then dehead them so that I can thread them on the garlands. I do that by just snipping them off their stalk. There's no really big method to doing this. It's just snipping them off. I use my hoseling snips. I try and get as close to the flower head as I can. Sometimes I leave a bit of a stalk on there because that can sort of help give a bit of a gap between the flower that you thread on next. I then thread on some cotton. I would actually recommend using a fishing line or something that's a lot more heavy duty. For the purpose of this video, I'm using a cotton so that you can see what I'm doing. It's just the white you can actually see, whereas if I used a fishing line that was clear, you probably wouldn't be able to see as much and it would be reflective in the filming. But to make sure it's strong enough, and especially if you're going to attach a ceramic bell to the end of it, this cotton will not hold it. I'm going to reinforce this with rope, but this is literally just doing this so you can see yourself how I do it, because you wouldn't be able to really see what I'm doing if it was fishing line. Once I have the thread on the needle, what I do is I make a little hoop at the top flower that I've threaded through. And the flowers are quite easy to thread through. Sometimes you get a little bit of resistance, but you just move the needle around the base or the sand tar to find the soft spot, and you just keep adding them and adding them. But I add a little loop so that I can hang them up, and then when I finish it off, I leave a strand at the end so I've got some room to sort of play with the string. Again, I recommend using fishing line, and I'm also doing this in advanced time so that I can just whip them together at the end, because I realized I was running out of time to sort of finish all these bells, because they are quite fiddly and quite tedious in a way. They're really enjoyable when you don't have a time frame to get them finished by, but because I had a time frame, I was trying to figure out a way to sort of smash heaps of these out so that I could have enough for the reveal to show you them finished. So here is a bunch of garlands I prepared earlier, and here is the kiln opening, so we can pop these all together. I can show you the finished results at the end, and we can say, yep, mold 69 is done. So I open up the kiln, really predictable results, really happy with everything. The bold colors are really lovely. I can already see how these are going to have this really gorgeous sort of cottage fairy garden charm. So I unpack all of those. Oh, it's not all the bells because they didn't all fit in the kiln, but I have popped in one of each pattern and one of each colorway so you can see what they're going to look like. And hopefully I'll have them hanging up somewhere in the studio at some stage, but we'll just see how we go, because they were just really fiddly this time, especially because I used the cotton instead of a fishing line. It was really I made it a lot harder for myself to be able to attach them so that they were strong enough to withhold the weight of the bell, but also withhold time and be able to stand the test of time. They are a crinkly, crackly flower that are very delicate, so it's not recommended that they are used outside or in any aggressive climate anyway, but it would have been nice to have that fishing line to really make them strong. But I realized that I never did the banding wheel reveal at the end, so like how I show it and spin it around to show you what's on there. So I was trying to find some inventive ways to show you the finished result, because they were so long, and I should have just popped them on the banding wheel, but I was so excited to pop the everlasting daisies on to see how they looked. And I love these. If you have seen my bells before, I used a reddy speckled clay, which was so beautiful, but I love how this has just got such a perfect sort of symmetry to it, and it's just I'm just really happy with them. I think they look great. I love the color, how it pops. I like the white, and I like the texture contrasting, so that the two textures contrasting with each other. So the smoothness of the ceramic and the really textured gruffness of those paper flowers. I think these turned out great. I didn't have any doubts this week. I knew that these were going to look good, just because I've done them before. It was kind of like a comfort zone. But I'd love to know what you think of these, especially if this is your first time seeing me make these paper daisy bells. Let me know what you think of this idea in the comments. And I've popped some background noises in there for you so you can hear the sounds of the bells. And here is your sneak peek for next week's reveal. Thank you so much for watching.